guess you can tell from all the dirt and all the grime on this old Cherokee that it was tested the last weekend. Now, I want to apologize in advance because we didn't get any video, and the reason why is the place we tested was just an old creek with a handful of rocks. This thing was built for rocks, so we didn't get any video because I feel like I owe you guys a good rock crawling video. As you can tell, it's in one piece. We do have some scuffing. The only carnage was one of the fender flares, one of the screws pulled through. That's an easy fix, but even the antenna mount is still there. Can you believe it? This thing was turned over and put in some really wild predicaments, but it held up. It did great. It's just ungodly heavy. It comes in at like 12 pounds. So it's a heavy pig. I do think the only thing I'm going to change is I think I'm going to pull these tires off. These tires did really good, but I think I can get it to do better. Now the deadbolt that we picked up last weekend had a set of BF Goodwrench Mud Terrain TAs by Proline, and I believe that's what I'm going to put on there. I think I'm going to take the old tires off, put these on. These are a hair taller, a lot. They're a blue compound, so it's a great tire, and just think it may be worth testing it to see if these actually do better. So that's on my agenda this week for next weekend. I've had some questions about how this body is mounted. Again, body is completely mounted to the chassis, and I had some questions about how I did this. So this video is just going to be covering that. It's going to be kind of crazy to do, so I'm going to have to kind of reverse engineer all of this here, and hopefully you guys can get it. But it's simple. It utilizes the Traxxas TRX4 rear bumper mount, and yeah, pretty simple. If you're interested, you will need, in order to do this, you will need your original bumper from your TRX4, and that's about it. So I'm gonna get the body off and we'll get started. So when you start to prep the chassis for the body, there are a couple of things that you are going to have to take into consideration. It's nothing major. Now, this is what I had to do in order to get it to fit on mine. First and foremost, if you want to utilize the original rock sliders and have the body tucked down into this channel here, you need to take, if you haven't done it already, on your chassis, take the sliders and remove them and just swap this one to the other side and the other side back over to this side. And what that's going to do is take that slider and move it forward so the ends of the slider are going to match up with the body. Then when you go to set your body down, what I had to do on mine was take the Dremel and grind out this place right here, and this is where the seam is on the body itself, and it allows that seam to sit in here and not have anything inhibiting the fitment. The third thing I had to do was completely lose the front body mounts. Just take them completely off is what I did. Allows that body to sit down like it needs to. And then the last thing that I had to do, and I'll show you this, is on the rear mount, I ground off, there's about a 1/16 of an inch of material around these mounting holes where you slide the bumper into. Just grind those completely flat with the rest of it, and then you're pretty much set. All right, so you're taking your bumper off of your stock TRX4 Sport, and this is what you're going to have, right? And so you simply just spin it around, and there's a bracket here. Now this bracket is not the one that this is from the front because I've already used it, but the bracket is basically the same, so just follow along. Same principle. What you want to do is just take this screw out, and then separate it, set the bumper to the side. And so the bracket that holds the bumper on is what you're going to be using. All right, and as you can see, there is a bunch of material. What we got to do is get it down flat, right? And so you can get to these screws pretty easy. Screw holes, rather. So we're going to grind all this material down around it, all the way around. And mind you, there should be like a receiver hitch here. You can use it or you can not use it. I chose to cut mine off because I didn't want it to hang up on anything. but the choice is yours, and you'll have to figure out the fitment to make it actually make the bumper recess into that one small spot. But anyway, so we got to get it down to take all this material off. And once it's ground off, what you're going to have now, this is not good looking at all, but it's the purpose in it. This is what you'll have. See, it's completely flat across. There's no material around it like the other one here. This one is what you want. And this is going to allow you to mount this thing, mount that body to this bumper mount in a rigid style, and gives it a lot of strength, and you shouldn't have any issues at all. So before we do that, we got to get the front mounts on the body. Now, you just want to set them in there kind of temporary and loose. If you can tell, the way I've got them mounted, there's a little bit of a radius on them, and the radius is pointed towards the grill. So just mount them in there kind of temporary to hold it on the body, or to hold it on the chassis. So now we want to take the chassis, take your mount that you've ground down, slide it into the bumper mount. Don't worry about putting any screws in the bottom of it. You're not going to need them. Then the next thing is to take the body itself. Now we're going to set the body on. I'm going to get it centered. And here's the biggest thing. You want to get it centered of your wheel wells, right? So you got to make sure you're right. You got it where you want it. It's sitting like you want it. Make sure the front is your grill and all is centered against whatever bumper you're going to run, if you're going to run a bumper at all. And then the biggest thing here is to make sure you're centered on the back, right? You know, as for what I used was the outside of the tires with the fender flares, basically. And so once that's like it needs to be, I'm going to clamp that mount to that bumper. You can see I've already got it drilled out, but the best way to hold it in place I found was just to find some kind of a clip, or if you trust yourself to hold it for that amount of time, you can do that too. Let me grab some clips. So now you can see I've got that bumper mount clipped to the actual body bumper, just using two little bitty clamps there that I use for working on boats. So now all I want to do is pick the front of the body up and just walk that mount completely off. Now you should have something that looks like this. All right, but pay no attention to the holes that I've already got drilled here. All right, these are the original holes on the bumper. So now only thing you need to do is find you a drill bit similar to that size. All right, and with it, now this is pretty much locked in, and you're going to take your drill, put it in there, and just drill you a hole right straight through. Make sure you keep it level, both sides, and then that is it as far as that goes. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put two screws in, and also add what I'm going to use as a spacer. As you can see, I hope you can see it right here, what I've used is just an M2.5 screw with a flared nut on the inside turned around backwards. Okay, and that's going to act as a spacer. And let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll go ahead and drop this one in right here. Now this may not work on yours, but it's how I had to do mine. So keep that in mind. This is not going to work on everybody's. You will have to play around with it as soon as you start to get the bumper mount installed. It's not hard though. All right, so now those are in place, and what that's going to do is keep this mount itself from getting warped or anything like that. So then we're just going to sit the mount on like such. Now what I like to do is put a washer, just a small washer, on each one. Washer on that side, washer on this side here. Then the only thing you're going to need is a little nylon nut. And then just tighten her down. And as you're tightening this, make sure that you're not getting any bend in that. Let's get this, do this the easy way. All right, so we got that one mounted. Move this side. Pull this down. We just don't want any bow in that bumper mount. At all. Okay, so that's in there. Now, when it comes out to the front mounts, you can't really do anything with these until you actually get this in the body and it placed where you want to, and then you'll have to basically slide the, I'll show you where to mount them, but you have to make the adjustments from underneath. You see we got this mounted. It is solid, very solid, and all this is going to do is slide right back into the original bumper mount. This is what I've found to be the most simplest way to mount this body to this Traxxas TRX4 Sport chassis. Works for me. Hope it works for you guys. Let's slide it back in there and do the final button up. So I'm in the mount. I'm going to slide it forward and just drop it down. It's in there. So now, one thing we got to do is contend with these front mounts. When you guys go to mount the front holes or the front mounts on this body, what you're going to have to utilize is going to be the front first or second hole for the original bumper mount, if you see there, right? And so what I'm going to do is just put this in there and screw it down. Do the same thing to the other side, okay? And when you get the other side done, then you can make the adjustments for the upper mounts to tie it into the actual body. And so you'll have to come up from the bottom. I'm sorry I can't get you a shot. You'll come up from the bottom and have to adjust those. You may not be able to get all 3 screws. I couldn't on mine. I'm only using 2. But let me turn it up on the side here. Let's see what I'm talking about. Hopefully, see in there? Only 2. And same thing over on this side. As you guys can tell, I am not a good teacher at all. But I hope somebody got something out of that as far as on how to mount that body to a TRX4 chassis. Yeah, I got no instructions with this thing as far as mounting, so I had to learn it on my own. And I'm sure there's I'm sure there's better videos out there for this, but I just wanted to try to put one together since I had to, I had a bunch of questions about how I got it to mount. And again, with it on there, it's solid. It's very solid. Hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll catch you on the next one real soon.